The purpose of today's video is not to beat up Republicans. It's really just to educate Republicans and others that support the right to keep and bear arms in some of the tactics of the left and the Democrats, to learn how they do things in the trenches to advance their agenda, and maybe we should learn from them. Specifically, I want to talk about Governor Josh Shapiro's, the governor of Pennsylvania's recent change to the way you register to vote using the Department of Motor Vehicles in Pennsylvania, and the lessons that we can learn in the Second Amendment community from this activity. Stay tuned. Let's talk about it when we get back. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the 4 Box of Diner, proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the U.S. Supreme Court Bar, and author of First They Came for the Gun Owners, the A to Z guide of how the anti-gunners intend to take away our guns and things that we can do to stop them from doing so. All right, folks. So here's the story. This week, the governor of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, changed the way that you can register to vote using the Department of Motor Vehicles. Just to step back in time a little bit, in the year of our Lord, 1993, when Bill Clinton was the President of the United States with control of the Senate and the House, before Newt Gingrich's 1994 takeover of the House, the Democrats controlled all of Washington. And what was the first piece of legislation that the Democrats with Bill Clinton enacted? The first piece of legislation was the motor voter law that caused people to be required, or at least states were required, to allow people to register to vote in their states when they either signed up for a driver's license, or if they renewed their driver's license at the Department of Motor Vehicles, DMV. Now, the states could do different things as to how this happened, but they had to make this available under federal law enacted in 1993 by Bill Clinton. So again, it seems to me when the Democrats get in power and control all 3 branches of government, if you will, or at least all of Washington, they really do know how to advance their agenda in a way that I'm not so sure the Republicans are as good at, given the fact that we're still sitting here with no nationwide concealed carry laws, despite favorable Supreme Court precedents. But I digress. So I want to turn my attention to what Josh Shapiro, the governor, did. Now, what the governor did in Pennsylvania in terms of advancing the ball of the left, which is to make sure everyone is registered to vote, as to what happens after they're registered to vote, that's the subject of a different video. But the step one, of course, is to make sure that as many people as possible are registered to vote and are on the registration list. That's always the goal of the Democrats, no matter what. So what he did was he changed the way the Department of Motor Vehicles runs. And he did this without seeking legislation or anything like that. He just basically did it using the Department of Motor Vehicles. And what he did was this. Up until this week, if you went to the Department of Motor Vehicles to get a driver's license or to extend your driver's license or renew your driver's license in the state of Pennsylvania, you were asked, do you want to vote or do you want to register to vote? Yes or no? And you could answer the question. You could register to vote if you wanted to. So what's different is that Governor Shapiro here, according to the reports, and I'll put links to these down below, has changed it so everyone that registers or everyone that gets a driver's license or renews his driver's license is registered to vote automatically. That's right, registered to vote automatically. And the only way to avoid that is you have to affirmatively opt out affirmatively. So the presumption is when you get your driver's license or you renew your driver's license, you will indeed be registered to vote. And unless you actively, affirmatively get out of that, you will be registered to vote in the state of Pennsylvania under this new tweak in the Department of Motor Vehicles programs. Okay? Now, here's my thinking. I understand why the Democrats are doing this, but here's my thinking. How come I don't see more creative thinking on the part of Republicans and people that support the right to keep and bear arms to advance our agenda in what I call in the trenches, sort of in the bowels of American government, in the ways that we just saw Governor Shapiro do in Pennsylvania to advance their agenda of making sure everyone's registered to vote? As to how they vote and what happens next, that's a separate question. So my thinking was, why can't Republicans say, well, look, anyone that is qualified to drive a motor vehicle, which is a multi-ton vehicle, driving 65, 70 miles per hour, often on highways with no barrier between you and the oncoming traffic in the other lanes coming the other opposite direction. So if we can trust people with a driver's license to drive, a ton or multi-ton vehicle, and we can also trust we, the people, to the point where we will just automatically register them to vote, whether they like it or not, giving them only the option to opt out, then why shouldn't Republicans also, when these sorts of things are done, why shouldn't they also automatically issue concealed carry weapons permits. Yes, there are states that allow permitless carry, and that's great, and I applaud that. But sometimes states like Florida, where you have a permitless carry system, you also have the ability to get a concealed carry weapons permit, because that little card that you might get from the state of Florida will allow you to have reciprocity to concealed carry in other states. So I only bring this up in the context of this motor voter situation. It seems to me that why aren't people saying, look, if we trust you enough to drive a motor vehicle and to register your driver's license, right? And we're going to opt you in to be a voter, why not also opt these people in to carry guns under our CCW permitting system? So they get their own card that they can use across the country in relevant states that recognize through the reciprocity system those concealed carry permits that are in your wallet. Now, again, it's not my job on this channel to literally figure out every single detail, every lobbying effort, every, I dotted and T crossed, because that's not what I do, and I don't have enough time to do all of this kind of groundwork, ground game stuff. But the fact is, it seems to me that Republicans across the country should be looking for ways to win in the trenches the way the Democrats do. The way Governor Josh Shapiro did today without consulting with anyone. He just did it using the Department of Motor Vehicle in Pennsylvania to make this tweak in the motor voter law in that state. And why shouldn't we in the gun community be looking for ways to do the same thing to advance the ball of the right to keep and bear arms for Americans? Because again, if we can trust people to be automatically registered to vote, and we can trust people to drive a very large, several thousand-pound car, motor vehicle, or truck, then they should automatically be registered with CCW permits as I see it. Again, there may be some twists and turns as to how this might work out, but it seems to me creative conservatives, creative Republicans, creative people out there in our Second Amendment community that I'm speaking to now, a lot of you, I'm sure, can figure this out in a way that I cannot in your local jurisdictions in your local state. So again, I want you to keep this in mind. The only other thing I want to remind you of, and this is important, and this I'm speaking to all Republicans. Someone in the Republican Party needs to learn how to negotiate. The way negotiations are supposed to work is there's something that I want, and there's something that you want, and somehow I get something that I want, and in exchange you get something that you want. Now let us look back in the year of our Lord 2022, when we're literally on the eve of a major Second Amendment victory by the U.S. Supreme Court in NYSERDA versus Bruin, which gave us the right to carry guns outside the home under the Second Amendment, because the right to bear arms means that. Literally, we're on the eve of this major victory. And what does John Cornyn, the Republican senator from Texas, and other Republicans, a handful of other Republicans, not all of them, and a handful of other Senate Republicans do? They decide then, on the eve of our victory in NYSERDA versus Bruin, is the perfect time to surrender, to capitulate to Joe Biden with the so-called bipartisan gun control law, giving Joe Biden a political win by being able to say the first federal gun control law in 20 years, a political win for the anti-gun Joe Biden. Why would a Republican want this to occur? And of course, what exactly was that, and what did we as the gun-owning community get out of it? The answer is we got squat. Under that Bipartisan Gun Control Act of 2022, the anti-gunners got encouragement for people in states to engage in to enact red flag laws, which are simply ex parte gun confiscation orders designed to target only gun owners. Because if you don't own a gun, red flag laws or gun confiscation orders don't matter to you because you don't own a gun. Which means these are entire court systems set up designed for one group of people, one group of Americans, gun owners. And of course, we know the problems from them. We've talked about these in other videos, the ex parte nature, the lack of due process, and so on. The fact that you can be a victim of false accusations, and it takes you over a year to solve the problem and thousands of dollars. But let us continue on. So the anti-gunners got that. They expanded the scope of 18 U.S.C. 922 to expand the number of people that were prohibited people under, the federal criminal statute. So they expanded the scope there. And as you probably have read recently in the papers, the Biden administration is now using this law, among other things, to cut funding or deny funding to schools that have archery programs or hunting programs or rifle teams. Again, lose Republicans. And what in theory do Republicans get? In theory, they were supposedly got some money for hardening schools, which means to give money to government employees to, in theory, protect our schools. That is not a win for the Second Amendment community to give money to government employees. So the bottom line is the Republicans, it seems to me, in many instances have no idea how to negotiate anything. This is not rocket science. Nevertheless, it seems like the Second Amendment community often gets thrown under the bus. I'm not quite sure why, and it doesn't seem like in some parts of the country we think as sharply as we should. So I'm bringing this situation in Pennsylvania to your attention to get your creative juices flowing in your communities about how you can engage in trench warfare the same way the Governor Josh Shapiro did in Pennsylvania by making this tweak to the computer programs in the Department of Motor Vehicle in that state to advance the cause of registering voters. Which is good or bad. I'm not getting into the policy of that specific thing. All I'm saying is that the Democrats had a particular agenda and they looked for a way to advance it and they made this adjustment on the fly. And why are we in the gun community, in the Second Amendment community, not looking for more and more of these opportunities to the exact same thing? Because we've talked about it before. Every little brick, every little win for the right to keep and bear arms anywhere in this country is a win for all of us because it all sets precedents. It all creates these bricks in the wall around our right to keep and bear arms and our entire Constitution, which is so mission critical in today's world. So anyway, and the last thing I want to say is do not forget that the Republican Senator John Cornyn from Texas is on the short list to replace Senator Mitch McConnell as the majority leader, or I should say as the Republican leader in the Senate, either as the majority leader and or the minority leader. And I don't wish ill will on Mitch McConnell, but it's pretty clear that Mitch McConnell at some point is not going to be the head of the Republican Party in the U.S. Senate forever. That's not going to be a forever thing. He's going to have to get replaced at some point. And the one thing we in the Second Amendment community should make sure is he is not replaced under any set of circumstances by John Cornyn, that moron that took the lead to negotiate, as I use the word negotiate as a ha-ha, not really, to sell us down the river when it comes to our gun rights in 2022 with a bipartisan gun control act. So we must keep in mind that if there's any discussion of John Cornyn being the replacement for Mitch McConnell in the U.S. Senate as a Republican leader, we all need to keep in mind and let everyone know that is not acceptable. Because the last thing we need is someone who has no concept about how to negotiate leading the Republican Party, because then he will sell us down the river on everything, guns and beyond. And we don't want morons. In my view, the act of John Cornyn in 2022 was indeed moronic in entering into that deal. And we don't want people like that in charge because it's not going to give rise to optimal outcomes. It's only give rise to pain and injury to our U.S. Constitution and beyond. So, okay, folks, hope you learned a little bit something here today at the Four Boxes Diner. Check out the store in Pennsylvania, and we'll talk to you again soon here at the Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.